Wait. Before you scroll past this video, you need to hear what happens in this story. A father called his daughter fat in front of strangers and sold her for $50,000 to pay off his gambling debts. She found out everything by listening behind the door. But what happened next was so unexpected that it left high society absolutely shocked. You're going to discover how a woman humiliated her entire life transformed into the most powerful person in history. You'll see the moment she destroyed her father in public, in front of 200 elite guests. And you'll understand why the man who bought her was hiding a secret that would change everything. Is this a story of revenge? Of love? Or something much bigger? Stay until the end because the last 15 minutes will turn everything upside down. Oh, and tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I want to know who's here with me on this emotional journey. Let's begin. Rebecca Miller stood in front of the bathroom mirror, struggling to fasten a corset that barely fit her body, when she heard laughter coming from her father's study. It wasn't joyful laughter. It was mocking laughter, the kind she'd known all too well since childhood. The Miller family had been one of the most prominent in Charleston, South Carolina. But appearances were deceiving. Behind the facade of luxury, there were unpayable debts, destructive addictions, and a father who saw his own daughter as merchandise. Just imagine, Charles, Rebecca heard her father's voice through the cracked door. That fat daughter of mine is finally going to be useful for something. Rebecca's blood ran cold. Fat. He'd called her fat in front of a stranger. But it wasn't the first time. It was never the first time. Rebecca dropped the corset and moved closer to the door, her heart pounding so hard she thought it would explode. She needed to hear. She needed to know. Are you sure he'll accept a woman that size? The other man's voice was loaded with doubt. I saw her yesterday in the garden. She's really very large. Large is putting it mildly, her father laughed cruelly. But Ryan Cooper is desperate for a wife, and I'm desperate to pay my debts. It's a fair trade. He gets that whale, I get rid of my problems. Rebecca felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. Her father was literally selling her. Like she was an animal. A fat, unwanted animal who'd finally found someone stupid enough to buy her. Does she know? The man asked. Know what? That she's being sold to pay off my gambling debts? Her father laughed again. Of course not. I'll tell her it's an arranged marriage. The idiot will probably think I'm doing her a favor. Tears began streaming down Rebecca's face, but she made no sound. She'd learned since childhood to cry silently, so her father wouldn't yell at her for being too dramatic. How much do you actually owe, Colonel? $50,000. A fortune. If I don't pay by the end of the month, they'll take the house, the land, everything. My inadequate daughter is literally my salvation. 50,000. That's what her life was being destroyed for. Because of her father's gambling. Because of his arrogance. Because of nothing. And this Ryan Cooper has that kind of money? He's loaded. The man is wealthy but a country boy. Lives isolated on that ranch since his wife died. When I offered my daughter in exchange for the money, he accepted immediately. I guess any woman will do for him at this point. The words hammered into Rebecca's head like nails being driven in. She wasn't even a choice. She was a desperate option for a man who'd accept anything. Rebecca returned to her room and sat on the bed, trembling. 23 years of life, and she'd never felt so humiliated. So reduced to nothing. Her own father called her fat, talked about her like she was a problem to be solved. 2 hours later, the housekeeper knocked on the door. Miss Rebecca, your father wants to speak with you in his study. Rebecca descended the stairs with trembling legs. She knew exactly what she was going to hear. And now she had to pretend to be surprised. Had to play the role of the obedient daughter who accepts the arranged marriage with gratitude. Her father sat behind the mahogany desk, shuffling papers. He didn't even look up when she entered. "Rebecca, sit down. I have wonderful news for you." "Wonderful." Rebecca almost laughed at the irony. "Yes, father. I've arranged a marriage for you." He finally looked up, and Rebecca saw something that chilled her, pure relief. The relief of someone finally getting rid of a burden. A very prosperous rancher, Ryan Cooper. Widower, looking for a wife. He accepted you despite your physical limitations. Rebecca dug her nails into her palms to keep from screaming. "Father, I don't even know this man." "You don't need to know him. He's wealthy, has a large ranch and, most importantly, he's willing to accept you as you are." Her father stood and began pacing the room. "Rebecca, you're 23 years old. No man in our social class wanted you. Not one. This is a miracle." "But father, what if we don't get along? What if he's cruel to me?" The colonel stopped walking and looked at her impatiently. "Rebecca, do you really think you're in a position to make demands? Look at yourself. Look at your size. How many men do you think will want a woman like you?" Each word was like a slap. "I did you a favor, girl. I found a man willing to overlook your physical defects and give you a chance to be a wife and mother. Most women your size die alone." "When would the wedding be?" Rebecca asked in a voice so low it almost disappeared. "You leave tomorrow morning. The wedding will be at his ranch. A simple ceremony. It's all arranged." Rebecca's head shot up. "Tomorrow? But father, that's too fast." "Too fast?" Her father laughed with disdain. "Rebecca, you should be thanking me on your knees. This man is paying a fortune to have you as a wife. A fortune that will save our family from ruin." There it was. The truth finally coming out, even though disguised. "How much is he paying?" The question came out before Rebecca could control herself. Her father stopped laughing immediately. "Excuse me? I asked how much he's paying for me." Rebecca stood up, feeling desperate courage rising from deep in her soul. "Because that's what's happening, isn't it? You're selling me." The silence in the room became tense as a rope about to snap. The colonel stared at his daughter with an expression mixing surprise and rage. "You heard our conversation. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. I heard. I heard you call me fat. I heard you say you were selling me to pay your gambling debts. I heard everything." Her father approached her slowly, his eyes glittering with fury. "And what do you plan to do with that information, Rebecca?" "Nothing." The answer came out tired, defeated. "I can't do anything. If I don't go, our family will be on the streets. And it'll be my fault, as always." "That's right." The colonel returned behind the desk. "You'll go to that ranch tomorrow, you'll marry that man, and you'll be grateful he accepts a woman like you. Understood?" Rebecca nodded, swallowing her tears. "You can go. And pack your things. You're only taking the essentials." The carriage stopped in front of a large but simple house. Very different from the mansion where Rebecca had grown up. She looked out the window and saw a tall man waiting on the porch. Ryan Cooper. The man who'd paid $50,000 for her as if he were buying cattle. Rebecca expected him to be like all the other men she knew, arrogant, cruel, someone who would look at her with barely disguised disgust. But when Ryan came down the steps and opened the carriage door, the first thing she saw were his eyes. Brown eyes. Tired. But not cruel. Miss Rebecca. His voice was deep but gentle. He extended his hand to help her down. Rebecca hesitated. She was expecting rudeness. But this seemed too polite. She took his hand and stepped down from the carriage, prepared to see disappointment in his face when he saw her size up close. After all, her father had made it very clear she was worthless. But Ryan simply nodded respectfully. You must be tired from the journey. Let's go inside. He picked up her small suitcase and began walking toward the house. Rebecca followed him, confused. Where was the cruelty? Where was the contempt? Where was the regret for having paid for a woman like her? The house inside was cozy. Well-maintained wooden furniture. Clean curtains. The smell of coffee and fresh bread. It didn't have the luxury of her father's mansion, but it had something her house never had, human warmth. Your room is here. Ryan opened the door to a simple but clean room. You can rest as much as you need. When you're ready, we'll talk. Rebecca entered the room and placed her suitcase on the bed. It was a double bed, not single as she'd expected. White sheets smelling of lavender. A window overlooking a well-kept garden. It was welcoming. Ryan? She turned before he left. Yes. Rebecca took a deep breath and decided to go straight to the point. If she was going to live in this hell, at least she wanted to understand the rules. Why did you buy me? The question hung in the air like a bomb about to explode. Ryan stopped completely, his hand still on the doorknob. For a long moment, he said nothing. Buy? He turned slowly to face her. Who said I bought you? My father. He said you paid $50,000 to have a wife. Sold me like I was cattle. The words came out loaded with all the humiliation Rebecca felt. Ryan closed the door and approached her. Rebecca instinctively stepped back, but he stopped at a respectful distance. Rebecca, your father lied to you. About many things. What do you mean he lied? Her heart raced. He said you accepted buying me even though I'm the way I am. The way you are what? Ryan's voice had a strange tone, as if he were genuinely confused. Ugly. Fat, as he calls me. The words hurt coming out, as they always did. Ryan stood still for a moment, and Rebecca saw something pass through his eyes. It wasn't pity. It was anger. Pure anger. Your father called you fat? Rebecca nodded, unable to speak. Rebecca. Ryan took a deep breath, as if trying to control his anger. I knew the truth about your family's situation before I accepted this arrangement. I knew about your father's gambling debts. I knew he was desperate. And I knew you were being forced into this. Then why did you accept? Ryan sat in the room's only chair, as if he needed to steady himself for what he was going to say. Because I recognized someone who was being treated the way I was treated after I lost my family. You lost your family? My wife Laura and my son Joey died 2 years ago. Carriage accident. His voice became low, loaded with pain. After that, everyone in town started treating me like I was contagious. Like it was dangerous to be near me. Like I was less than human. Rebecca felt a pang in her chest. She knew that feeling of being treated as less than human. She knew it all too well. When your father came to me, talking about marrying you to me, I realized you were in a similar situation. Rejected. Humiliated. Treated as if you had no value. Ryan looked directly into her eyes. I thought maybe we could help each other. Help how? Rebecca asked. By being respectful. By being kind. By being human. Rebecca sat on the bed, her legs weak. This didn't make sense. Men weren't kind to women like her. Men didn't respect her. Men looked at her with disgust or indifference. Aren't you sorry? For accepting a woman like me? Ryan stood from the chair and walked to the window. Oh, Rebecca, can I ask you a question? Yes. Who said you're less than any other woman? The question caught Rebecca completely off guard. Everyone. My father, my brother, the suitors my parents tried to arrange for me. Everyone always made it very clear that I'm inadequate. Inadequate for what? For being a wife. For being a mother. For being loved. Ryan turned from the window to look at her, and Rebecca saw something in his eyes she'd never seen in any man's eyes, genuine compassion. Rebecca, do you want to have dinner with me? I can cook, or if you prefer, you can cook. The change of subject confused her. I can cook. Great. The kitchen is yours. An hour later, Rebecca was in the kitchen preparing a simple stew with the ingredients she found. Ryan sat at the kitchen table and watched her cook, without commenting, without complaining, without showing impatience. When she served his plate, Rebecca waited. Waited for the criticism, the complaint, the comment about how fat women always cooked too much because they ate too much. Ryan tasted the stew and closed his eyes. It's been 2 years since I've had a real meal. What do you mean? Since Laura died, I only eat what's necessary to survive. Bread, cheese, simple things. He looked at her with a sad smile. This stew tastes like home. It tastes like care. Rebecca felt her eyes fill with tears. When was the last time someone had complimented her cooking? When was the last time someone had said she took care of anything? They ate in silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable silence. It was the silence of two people who understood pain without needing to explain. After dinner, Ryan showed her around the house. It was simple but well maintained. In the living room, Rebecca saw something that made her stop, a portrait of a blonde woman, thin, delicate. The complete opposite of her. That was Laura. Ryan stopped beside her, looking at the portrait. Rebecca looked at the woman in the portrait and then at herself reflected in the glass of the frame. The difference was striking. Laura was everything Rebecca wasn't. Small. Delicate. Blonde. Beautiful. I understand now, Rebecca said quietly. Understand what? Why you accepted marrying me. You knew I'd never try to replace her. You knew I'm so different that I'd never be a threat to her memory. Ryan was quiet for a long moment. Rebecca, it's okay. She moved away from the portrait. I understand. It's better this way. At least you're honest. That night, Rebecca lay in the bed in the room Ryan had given her and stared at the ceiling. From the next room, she could hear Ryan moving around, clearly unable to sleep either. She had expected cruelty and found kindness. Had expected contempt and found respect. But she'd also discovered that even kindness could hurt when it came with the certainty that you'd never be anyone's first choice. Ryan Cooper hadn't bought her. He'd accepted her. But Rebecca was beginning to understand that maybe that was even more complicated than a simple business transaction. Because now she had to figure out how to live with a man who treated her well but who still loved a dead woman who was everything Rebecca would never be. Rebecca woke in the middle of the night to the sound of sobs coming from the next room. They were masculine sobs, deep, the kind of crying that comes from the depths of the soul when someone thinks no one is listening. Ryan was crying. She lay there listening for almost an hour, her heart aching. What kind of pain made a strong man cry like that? When silence finally returned, Rebecca couldn't sleep anymore. In the morning, Ryan had left early for the fields without saying anything. Rebecca was alone in the house, lost, not knowing what her role was there. She wasn't a real wife. She wasn't a maid. She wasn't anything defined. She was just someone who was there. That's when she decided to clean the house that everything changed. Rebecca was organizing the living room table when she saw a drawer slightly open. Inside, there were papers. And without thinking much, she opened it completely. What she saw made her stop breathing. They were letters. Dozens of handwritten letters. All beginning with "My dearest Laura." Rebecca picked one up with trembling hands and read. "My dearest Laura. Today marks 6 months since you left and I still wake up expecting to see you beside me. I still make coffee for 2 people. I still talk to you before I sleep. The neighbors think I'm going crazy, and maybe they're right. How do I keep living without the woman who was my soul?" Rebecca felt like she'd been stabbed in the chest. She continued reading, unable to stop. "Laura, my love. I brought a woman home today. I know you'd understand. It's not love. It could never be. It's just companionship, someone to break this silence that's killing me. She's not like you, my princess. No one ever will be. But maybe, just maybe, I can pretend for a while that I'm not completely alone." Tears began falling on the paper, smudging the ink. Rebecca read letter after letter, each more devastating than the last. Ryan described Laura as my star, my reason for living, the most perfect woman God created. And about Rebecca, he wrote. "She's kind, but she's not you. She cooks well, but she's not you. She tries, but never, ever will she be you." Rebecca was so absorbed in reading that she didn't hear the footsteps on the porch. When Ryan appeared in the living room doorway and saw her with the letters in her hands, his face transformed into a mask of fury. "What are you doing?" His voice came out like a roar, and Rebecca jumped from the chair, knocking the letters to the floor. She'd never seen Ryan angry. And now she understood why. He was terrifying when upset. "I was just cleaning, Anne. You were reading my private letters." Ryan shouted louder than any man had ever shouted at her. "How dare you? How could you?" Rebecca started crying, but not from fear. From pure rage. "You want to know how I dare? Because after a lifetime of being humiliated, I thought I'd finally found someone who saw me as a person. I never said you were special. No, you didn't. Rebecca shouted back, surprising them both. You just brought me here to pretend your perfect wife isn't dead. I'm just a cheap substitute, an object for you to pretend you're not alone. You don't understand anything. I understand everything. I read your letters. Rebecca picked one up from the floor and read aloud, she tries, but never, ever will she be you. That's me. The woman who'll never be good enough even to replace a dead woman. Shut up. Ryan roared, snatching the letter from her hand. You have no right to talk about Laura. You didn't know her. You don't know what it was like to have a perfect, delicate woman who truly loved me. And me? What am I then? Rebecca was screaming with tears streaming down her face. Your pet? Your maid you don't have to pay? Your rag doll to pretend you're not alone? Your... Ryan stopped, breathing heavily. And what he said next broke Rebecca's heart in half. You're convenient. The word echoed in the room like a gunshot. Rebecca stepped back as if she'd been slapped. Convenient. She repeated the word, tasting the bitterness in her mouth, 23 years being called fat, useless, ugly, and now I'm convenient. Rebecca, I didn't mean. Didn't mean what? The truth? She laughed, but it was a joyless laugh. You know what I read in your letters, Ryan? That you were a doctor. A respected doctor in Atlanta. That you abandoned everything to come bury yourself on this ranch because you can't accept that your wife died. Ryan stood motionless. You don't know anything. I know you're a coward. Rebecca was out of control now, saying things she never imagined she'd have the courage to say. My family humiliated me my whole life, but at least they had the honesty to hate me openly. You're worse. You pretend kindness while using me to pretend your perfect life didn't end. Get out! Ryan roared, pointing at the door. Get out of my house! Gladly. Rebecca ran to the bedroom, grabbed her suitcase, and left, slamming the door. Outside it was getting dark, but Rebecca didn't care. She started walking down the dirt road, without a destination, just wanting to get away from that man and that situation. How had she been so stupid to think someone like Ryan could see her as more than an object? Rebecca walked for hours in the dark, crying, stumbling, lost. When she finally stopped, she was in the middle of nowhere, not knowing how to get back. The sky started releasing heavy drops of rain. Within minutes, it turned into a storm. Rebecca took shelter under a tree, shaking with cold and fear. She was completely lost. Soaked. And beginning to realize she might have made the biggest mistake of her life. That's when she heard the horses. Rebecca. Rebecca. It was Ryan's voice cutting through the storm. He was shouting her name desperately. Rebecca stayed quiet, hidden. She didn't want to see him. Didn't want to hear more lies about kindness when the truth was she was just convenient. But Ryan kept searching. For hours she heard him riding back and forth, shouting her name, his voice becoming increasingly desperate. Rebecca, please. Where are you? I'm sorry. When lightning lit up the sky, Rebecca saw Ryan not far away, soaked, the horse nervous from the storm. And she saw something that shocked her. He was crying. Crying while shouting her name. Rebecca, please, come back. I can't lose anyone else. I can't. His voice broke on the last phrase, and Rebecca felt like someone had squeezed her heart. She stepped out from behind the tree. "Ryan." He turned the horse toward her voice and almost fell from the saddle when he saw her. Within seconds he was on the ground, running to her. "My God, Rebecca. Are you okay? Are you hurt?" He examined her from head to toe, his hands trembling. "I've been searching for you all night. I thought I'd lost you too." "Why do you care?" she asked, still crying. "I'm just convenient, remember?" Ryan stopped and looked into her eyes. In the darkness of the storm, soaked, desperate, he finally spoke the truth. "Because you're not convenient, Rebecca. You're brave. You're strong. You faced your family, faced me, faced a storm alone. And I..." His voice broke. "I'm a coward who was using you to run from my own pain." Rebecca stood still, rain beating on her face, hearing words she never imagined she'd hear. "Forgive me for what I said. Please, don't leave me alone again." And for the first time, Rebecca saw Ryan Cooper not as the man who accepted her out of pity, but as a broken man who maybe needed her as much as she needed him. 2 weeks had passed since the night of the storm. Rebecca and Ryan were learning to live together without masks, without lies. It wasn't love yet, but it was honesty. And for the first time in her life, Rebecca felt seen as a person. That Tuesday morning, she was in the garden planting tomatoes when she heard the sound of horses approaching. She looked up and saw an elegant carriage stopping in front of the house. Her blood ran cold when she recognized the family crest. Edward. Her older brother stepped out of the carriage as if he owned the place. Tall, thin, always impeccably dressed, he had the same air of superiority as their father. Rebecca hadn't seen him in 6 months and hoped she never would again. "Rebecca!" Edward shouted, crossing the gate without asking permission. "Where's this new peasant house of yours?" Rebecca stood slowly, wiping the dirt from her hands on her apron. "What are you doing here, Edward?" "I came to see how my little sister is adapting to farm life." He looked Rebecca up and down with contempt. "Wow, you've managed to get even fatter. Impressive." The familiar stab of humiliation hit Rebecca hard, but this time she didn't lower her head. "Just say what you want. Straight to the point." "I like that." Edward smiled, but it was a cruel smile. "I need money, Rebecca. A lot of money. And since you now have a wealthy husband, Ryan doesn't owe you anything." "Oh, doesn't he?" Edward laughed loudly. "My dear sister, do you really think those $50,000 he paid for you were enough to solve all our family's problems?" Rebecca felt her stomach sink. "What do you mean?" "Dad only told half the story, child. Our family owes much more than $50,000. Much more. And now that you're married to a prosperous rancher, it's your obligation to help." "My obligation?" Rebecca's voice came out louder than intended. "Of course. You finally became useful for something in life besides being a burden. Now you'll keep being useful." Edward approached her with that intimidating manner he always used when they were children. "I want $100,000 by the end of the month." "You're crazy if you think." "That what?" "That I'll accept no from the obese daughter the family had to sell because no one else wanted her?" Edward shouted loud enough to wake the dead. "You'll give me that money, Rebecca, or I'll tell the whole town how you got here." That's when Ryan appeared coming from the field. He'd heard the shouting and was walking quickly toward the garden. "Who's this?" Edward asked, looking Ryan up and down as if evaluating cattle. My husband. Edward laughed in her face. This is the rancher who accepted you? Wow, Rebecca, he really was desperate. Edward. Rebecca hissed through her teeth. What? It's the truth. Look at you, then look at him. The man clearly did charity. Edward spoke loud enough for Ryan to hear. I bet he's already regretting accepting a freak like you. Ryan reached them at that moment, his face closed. Who am I speaking with? Edward Miller, Rebecca's brother. Edward extended his hand with an air of superiority. I came to collect the money you owe our family. Ryan looked at the extended hand but didn't shake it. I don't owe your family any money. Oh, don't you? Edward laughed. You paid $50,000 for my sister, right? Well, it turns out our family owes $200,000. You only bought a quarter of the debt. Rebecca saw Ryan's face change. He looked at her with an expression she couldn't decipher. $200,000? Ryan asked quietly. That's right. And now that Rebecca is married to you, it's your responsibility to pay the rest. Edward was clearly enjoying the situation. After all, you bought the reject. Now you have to deal with the problems that come with her. Enough. Rebecca exploded. Enough of calling me fat. Enough of talking like I'm property. Edward looked at her surprised. Rebecca had never shouted at him before. Wow, the fatty gruesome teeth. How cute. Edward laughed. But you're still what you've always been, a burden the family had to sell because nobody else wanted you. That's when Ryan approached Edward, and Rebecca saw something in her husband's eyes that gave her chills. Ryan was much bigger than Edward, much stronger, and clearly furious. Get off my property. Now. Listen here, rancher, Edward started. I said get out. Ryan roared so loud even the horses in the carriage got scared. And if I hear you disrespect my wife one more time, I'll break you in half. Edward stepped back, clearly frightened. He didn't expect Ryan to defend Rebecca. You haven't heard the last of this. Edward shouted as he walked back to the carriage. Family is family, Rebecca. You owe us this help. The carriage left in a cloud of dust, leaving Rebecca trembling with emotion. She looked at Ryan, expecting to see disappointment in his eyes for discovering the family debt was much larger than he'd imagined. Ryan, I didn't know. She began. You didn't know anything. Ryan interrupted, but his voice wasn't angry. It was tired. Your father lied to you about everything, didn't he? Rebecca nodded, unable to speak. And your brother just confirmed you really were sold. Like cattle. Ryan, I'm sorry. If you want me to leave. Leave? Ryan turned to look at her directly. Rebecca, did you hear what I said to your brother? That he had to leave? No. I said you're my wife. And I called you my wife. Ryan approached her. And when he called you fat, I wanted to break his face. Rebecca looked at Ryan without understanding. Why? Because nobody talks to you like that in front of me. Nobody. Not your family, not anyone. Before Rebecca could respond, another carriage appeared on the road. This time, Rebecca recognized it immediately. It was her father's carriage. No. She whispered. It can't be. Colonel Miller stepped out of the carriage with all the arrogance Rebecca remembered. Dressed as if going to a party, smiling as if making a social visit, he walked toward them as if he owned the place. "Rebecca, my daughter. How are you?" The hypocrisy in his voice made Rebecca feel nauseous. "What do you want here?" "I came to talk to your husband about some adjustments to our agreement." The colonel looked at Ryan with the same fake smile. "Mr. Cooper, I believe my son Edward was here earlier." "He was. And I threw him out." Ryan responded without beating around the bush. I understand. He can be a bit too direct." The colonel laughed as if it were a joke. "But the fact is we need to talk about the remaining payment." "Remaining payment?" "Yes, you see, when we made our original agreement, I said our debt was $50,000. But it turns out, well, I underestimated the amount a bit." Rebecca saw Ryan go pale. "A bit?" $200,000 in total. You already paid $50,000. There's $150,000 left. The colonel spoke as if discussing the price of potatoes. "I'm sure a man of your position won't have any problem paying the rest." Ryan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was dangerously low. "You deceived me." "I didn't deceive you. I just omitted some details." The colonel shrugged. "But now that you're married to Rebecca, we're family." "Family helps each other, right?" "Family?" Rebecca exploded. "You sold me like cattle and now you want to talk about family?" The colonel looked at her with irritation. "Rebecca, don't be dramatic. You should be grateful. I found a husband for you when no one else wanted a woman your size." "Enough." Rebecca shouted louder than she'd ever shouted in her life. "Enough humiliation. Enough treating me like merchandise. You're not my father. A real father doesn't sell his daughter." The colonel was shocked. Rebecca had never spoken to him like this. "And you won't get another cent from Ryan," Rebecca continued, surprising herself. "He already paid more than I'm worth. Now get out of here and never come back." "Rebecca." The colonel tried to use the authoritative tone that always worked. "I said get out." Rebecca was beside herself. Years of humiliation finally exploding. "And if you come back here, I'll tell the whole town how you lost our fortune gambling and sold your own daughter to pay your debts." The colonel went pale. That was a scandal that could completely destroy his reputation. Ryan watched everything in silence, and Rebecca could feel his gaze on her. When she finally turned to look, she saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before. Admiration. "You heard my wife," Ryan said to the colonel, but his eyes didn't leave Rebecca. "Get off our property and don't come back." The colonel, defeated and humiliated, returned to the carriage without saying another word. When they were alone, Ryan approached Rebecca. "Where has this woman been all these days?" he asked softly. "What woman?" "The strong woman who just threw out her father and defended our marriage." Rebecca looked at him, still trembling with adrenaline. I don't know. No one ever told me I was strong." Ryan smiled, and it was the first genuine smile Rebecca had seen on his face. "Well, I'm telling you now. You're the bravest woman I've ever met." Rebecca stood in the middle of the yard, trembling. Not from fear, but from something she'd never felt before, power. For the first time in her life, she'd faced those who humiliated her. had defended herself. And Ryan was looking at her as if he were seeing a completely different person. Rebecca. His voice came out soft, almost a whisper. How do you feel? She looked at her own hands, still dirty from garden soil, still trembling with adrenaline. I feel free. Ryan approached slowly, as if she were something fragile that could break at any moment. You were incredible. The way you faced your father. I'd never done that before. Rebecca raised her eyes to meet his. Never defended anyone. Not even myself. Why did you do it today? The question hung in the air between them. Rebecca thought about the answer. And when she spoke, the words came from the depths of her heart. Because you defended me first. When my brother called me fat, you almost went after him. No one's ever done that for me. Ryan stopped right in front of her, so close Rebecca could feel the warmth of his body. Rebecca, I need to ask you something. What? Forgiveness. The word came out loaded with pain. Forgiveness for treating you as Laura's substitute. Forgiveness for calling you convenient. Forgiveness for not seeing sooner who you really are. Rebecca felt her eyes fill with tears. Who I really am. A strong woman. Brave. Who survived years of humiliation and can still be kind. A woman who defends the people she loves, even when no one ever defended her. Ryan raised his hand, hesitant, toward her face. May I? Rebecca nodded. And when Ryan gently touched her cheek, she closed her eyes. It was the first tender touch she'd received from a man. Rebecca, do you want to have dinner with me tonight? For real. Not as guests sharing a house. As people who care about each other. Dinner was different from all the other meals they'd shared. Ryan made a point of serving Rebecca first, asking if the food was good, really talking with her. And Rebecca found herself laughing. Really laughing, for the first time in years. Can I ask you a question? Ryan said when they finished eating. Yes. How did you manage to keep your kindness after everything they did to you? Rebecca thought about the question for a long moment. I guess because I knew how much it hurts to be treated badly. And I never wanted to make another person feel that pain. Ryan looked at her with an intensity that made her heart race. You're extraordinary, Rebecca. And I was an idiot for not seeing that from day one. After dinner, they went to the living room. And Rebecca stopped in front of Laura's portrait, as she always did. But this time, Ryan approached her. Rebecca, there's something I need to do. He walked to the desk where he kept the letters and picked up the entire stack. Rebecca watched without understanding. What are you going to do? What I should have done a long time ago. Ryan walked to the fireplace and lit the fire. I'm going to burn these letters. Rebecca's eyes widened. Ryan, no. They're your memories of Laura. They're prisons. He held the stack of letters, looking at her. They're chains keeping me bound to a past that will never return. And as long as I'm bound to it, I'll never be able to live in the present. But you loved her. I did. And I'll always love her memory. But Laura is dead, Rebecca. And I'm alive. And you. He stopped, took a deep breath. You're here. Alive. Real. Brave. Beautiful. Beautiful? Rebecca laughed bitterly. Ryan, you don't need to lie. I'm not lying. He dropped the letters and approached her. You want to know when I realized you're beautiful? Rebecca nodded, unable to speak. Today. When you faced your father. When you shouted enough humiliation. When you defended our marriage as if it were real. Ryan raised his hands to hold her face. In that moment you were radiant. You were powerful. You were absolutely beautiful. Tears began streaming down Rebecca's face. Ryan, can I kiss you? He asked quietly. For real this time. Not out of convenience. Not from loneliness. Because I want to. Because you're you. When his lips touched hers, Rebecca felt like the entire world had stopped. It wasn't just a kiss. It was years of humiliation being healed by a moment of pure tenderness. When they separated, Ryan rested his forehead against hers. Rebecca, do you want to try? Try to make this work. Not as an arrangement or a convenience, but as two people who care about each other? Do you really care about me? I care so much it hurts, he whispered. I care so much that when I saw you facing your family, I felt a pride I'd never felt before. Pride that you're my wife. Rebecca threw herself into his arms, crying. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief. Of joy. Of hope. Ryan carried her to his room that night. Not to the small room where she slept, but to the master bedroom. And when he laid her on the bed, his hands were gentle, reverent, as if she were precious. Are you sure? He asked. And Rebecca saw in his eyes that he would stop if she asked. I'm sure. For the first time in my life, I'm sure about something. When Ryan made love to her that night, it was as if Rebecca was reborn. Each caress was a word of affirmation. Each kiss was a promise. Each whisper in her ear was healing years of rejection. You're perfect, he whispered in the darkness. You're mine. In the morning, Rebecca woke in Ryan's arms and, for the first time in 23 years, felt complete. When he opened his eyes and smiled at her, it was a smile different from all the others. Good morning, my wife. My wife. The words sounded different now. Real. Ryan, can I ask you something? Anything. Did you really pay $50,000 for me? Ryan was quiet for a moment, and Rebecca saw something pass through his eyes. Rebecca, there's something I need to tell you. Her heart raced. What? I never signed any contract with your father. Rebecca sat up in bed abruptly. What do you mean? When your father came to me, desperate, talking about marrying you to me, I said I'd agree to meet you. That's all. I said if you two got along, I'd consider the marriage. Ryan sat up too, holding her hands. But your father was so desperate he made up the whole story. Told you everything was already arranged. So, you never bought me? Never. Wouldn't pay, couldn't. What happened was that when you arrived here, I saw a woman who was suffering as much as I was. And I thought maybe we could help each other. Ryan pulled her closer. But you know what's funny? What? If I had to pay, I'd pay any amount for you. Now that I know who you are, I'd pay a fortune to have you in my life. Rebecca started crying again, but they were tears of pure happiness. So what are we now? She asked. Ryan smiled and kissed her softly. We're two people who found each other in pain and decided to build something beautiful together. We're husband and wife for real. We're the beginning of a love story. 3 weeks after the night Ryan burned the letters, Rebecca was in the garden harvesting tomatoes when she saw a messenger approaching. It was a boy from town, sweating, clearly nervous about delivering mail to such a distant ranch. Mrs. Cooper? He asked hesitantly. Rebecca smiled. Mrs. Cooper. She still got chills every time she heard that name. Yes, that's me. I have a letter for you. From Colonel Miller. The smile disappeared from Rebecca's face. She took the letter with trembling hands and waited for the boy to leave before opening it. What she read made her feel sick. My dear daughter Rebecca. I hope this letter finds you well. I'm writing to invite you to the gala ball I'm hosting next Saturday, in celebration of my 60th birthday. All of high society will be present, and it would be an honor to have my daughter and son-in-law with us. I ask that you attend. I have a wonderful surprise for you both. With paternal love, Colonel Miller. Rebecca crumpled the letter forcefully. Paternal love. The man who called her fat, who sold her to pay gambling debts, now talked about paternal love. Ryan came in from the field at that moment and saw the expression on her face. What's wrong? Rebecca handed him the crumpled letter. Ryan read in silence, his expression becoming increasingly somber. He's got nerve, Ryan said when he finished. There's something strange about this. Rebecca started pacing. My father doesn't do anything without a reason. And this wonderful surprise thing. I'm afraid of what he's planning. Do you want to go? Rebecca stopped pacing and looked at Ryan. Part of me wants to go just to see his face when he discovers he didn't destroy us. But another part. Another part what? Another part is afraid he has some plan to humiliate me in front of all those people. Ryan approached and held her hands. Rebecca, you're not the same woman who left that house months ago. You're strong now. You know who you are. But what if? What if nothing? Ryan interrupted gently. If you want to go, we'll go. And I'll be by your side the whole time. Rebecca looked into his eyes and saw the certainty she needed. I want to go. I want him to see he didn't break me. On Thursday, Rebecca received another surprise, a large package delivered by an elegant carriage. Inside was the most beautiful dress she'd ever seen. Navy blue, made of silk, with delicate embroidery. And a note. For my dear daughter, a dress worthy of a lady of our family. I can hardly wait to see you at the ball. Father. Rebecca held the dress against her body and looked at herself in the mirror. It was beautiful. It was expensive. And it was exactly her size. But there was something sinister about her father's sudden generosity. Why would he send a dress? She asked Ryan. Maybe because he wants you to look presentable for whatever he's planning. Their suspicion was confirmed on Friday, when Mrs. Rosa, the old housekeeper from the house, appeared at the ranch. The woman was nervous, looking over her shoulder as if someone might be following her. Girl, I need to warn you about something, Rosa said as soon as Rebecca received her in the kitchen. What is it, Mrs. Rosa? Your father is up to something. There's a man at the house. An Italian count, very wealthy. Your father is telling everyone that the marriage to Mr. Ryan was a mistake. That you were deceived. Rebecca's blood ran cold. What do you mean? He's saying he's going to annul the marriage and marry you to the Italian. That it's better for you. Rosa held Rebecca's hands. Girl, he wants to sell you again. To someone who'll pay more. Rebecca felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. He can't do that. I'm married. He's saying the marriage wasn't properly consummated. That there's a way to annul it. Rosa was crying now. The Italian already paid money up front. Your father is desperate because the debts have grown. When Ryan heard the story, his reaction was immediate and furious. We're going to that ball. And your father will discover he made the biggest mistake of his life. On Saturday night, Rebecca looked at herself in the mirror one last time. The blue dress fit her perfectly, accentuating her curves instead of hiding them. Ryan had insisted she leave her hair down. And for the first time in her life, Rebecca felt truly beautiful. You're stunning, Ryan said when she came down the stairs. He was elegant in a black suit, but it wasn't the artificial elegance of nobility. It was the natural elegance of a confident man. Ryan, there's something I need to know before we go. What? Are you really just a rancher? Ryan smiled mysteriously. Why do you ask? Because the way you speak, how you carry yourself, you're not an ordinary man. Rebecca, I was a doctor in Atlanta. My family had money. A lot of money. When Laura died, I abandoned everything and came here because I wanted a simple life. He approached her. But if necessary, I can go back to being who I was before. What does that mean? It means your father has no idea who he's messing with. Their entrance at the ball was like a bomb exploding in slow motion. Rebecca entered the ballroom of the house where she grew up, but now not as the rejected daughter. She entered as a married woman, confident, beautiful, accompanied by a man who looked at her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. The silence that fell was absolute. 200 people stopped talking to look at Rebecca. But this time they weren't looks of pity or disdain. They were looks of surprise, admiration, even envy. Colonel Miller almost dropped his champagne glass when he saw his daughter. Next to him was a short, fat, middle-aged man. Clearly the Italian count. Rebecca. Her father approached with the fake smile she knew so well. How beautiful you look. And Ryan, what a pleasure to have you here. Father, Rebecca responded coldly. Come, I want to introduce you to someone very special. The colonel motioned for the Italian to approach. This is Count Benedetto, from Rome. He was fascinated when I told him about you, Rebecca. The Italian kissed Rebecca's hand, but she quickly withdrew it. Pleasure. Benedetto was just commenting how wonderful it would be if you could visit him in Italy, her father continued. Perhaps even, move there. Rebecca felt Ryan tense beside her. It was time. Father, can I speak with you privately? Of course, dear. Rebecca stepped away a few paces, but not far enough that nearby people couldn't hear. She wanted them to hear. Father, I heard you told people my marriage was a mistake. The colonel went pale. Rebecca, dear, not here. Here, yes. Rebecca raised her voice enough for half the ballroom to hear. You said you want to annul my marriage to marry me to that man. Conversation stopped completely. Everyone was listening now. Rebecca, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. Rebecca spoke even louder. You're trying to sell me again, like you did the first time. A shocked murmur ran through the ballroom. Sell? What do you mean sell? Did you tell these people how you called me fat? How you sold me to pay your gambling debts? How you told me I was a burden that was finally useful for something? The colonel was desperate now. Rebecca, stop. Why would I stop? It's the truth. Rebecca turned to the horrified audience. My father sold me like cattle because he lost the family fortune gambling. And now he wants to sell me again to that man because the debts have grown." The silence was deathly. Count Benedetto was red with shame, clearly not knowing he was trying to buy a wife. Not knowing where to put his face, Benedetto stammered an apology and left the ballroom with hurried steps. That's when Ryan approached and placed his hand on Rebecca's waist. "And I'm very proud to be married to a woman brave enough to face those who humiliated her." "Mr. Cooper." The colonel tried one last card. "I'm sure we can come to an agreement." "Agreement?" Ryan laughed. "You know what's funny? You think I'm just a poor rancher who accepted your daughter out of desperation." The colonel nodded, hopeful. Ryan pulled a paper from his jacket's inner pocket. "This is the deed to my properties in Atlanta. 15 properties in the city center. Worth more than all the fortune your family ever had." The paper passed from hand to hand among curious guests. The murmurs turned into exclamations of surprise. "And this?" Ryan pulled out another paper. "Is the deed to my medical clinic. The largest private clinic in the city." The colonel was white as a sheet now. "Your daughter didn't marry a poor rancher, Colonel. She married one of the wealthiest men in Atlanta. And she's worth more than all the gold in the world." Rebecca looked at her father, who was humiliated in front of all the high society he so wanted to impress. "Father," she said quietly but firmly, "never try to sell me again. Never contact me again. And never call me daughter again. Because a real father doesn't do what you did to me." Rebecca turned and left the ballroom arm in arm with Ryan, leaving behind a lifetime of humiliation. And for the first time, she had the last word. 6 months after the ball where Rebecca publicly humiliated her father, she stood in front of the bedroom mirror, adjusting the most beautiful wedding dress she'd ever seen. It wasn't the dress she'd dreamed of as a child. It was much better. It was the dress of a woman who chose her own destiny. "Are you ready?" Ryan asked from the door. But when she turned around, he stopped breathing. "My God, Rebecca, you're perfect. Today would be the real wedding. In the town church, with guests who truly loved them. With vows that would come from the heart." The first wedding had been a farce arranged by her father. This would be the celebration of true love. "Ryan, can I make a confession before we go?" Rebecca held his hands, trying to control her emotion. "Anything. When I was little, I used to dream about my wedding. I dreamed of a man who would look at me as if I were the most precious thing in the world." Tears began streaming down her face. "I never thought that would be possible for someone like me." Ryan dried her tears with his thumb, being careful not to smudge her makeup. "Rebecca, you want to know something? From the first day you arrived here, I knew you were special." "What do you mean?" "Remember when you asked me why I'd accepted you? I said it was out of compassion. Because I recognized someone who was suffering." Ryan smiled. "It was true, but it wasn't the whole truth." Rebecca frowned. "What was the whole truth?" "The truth is that when you stepped out of that carriage, scared but still with your head held high, I saw courage. When you offered to cook on the first day, I saw kindness. When you cleaned my wound when I cut myself on the fence, I saw care." Ryan took her hands. "I was testing you, Rebecca. Not to see if you were good enough for me. To see if I was good enough for you. Testing how? Every time I was rude, every time I talked about Laura, every time I treated you badly. I was waiting to see if you'd leave. Because deep down, I knew you deserved much more than a broken man living in the past. Rebecca felt like her heart would explode with emotion. And why did you stop testing? Because on the night of the storm, when you ran away and I thought I'd lost you, I realized I didn't want to test anything anymore. I just wanted you. Forever. The wedding was everything Rebecca never knew she wanted. The small church was filled with people who truly cared about them. The ranch workers, the townspeople who'd learned to love Rebecca, Mrs. Rosa who cried as if she were her mother. When Ryan spoke his vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the church. Rebecca, you came into my life when I was dead inside. You taught me there's life after loss. Love after pain. Hope after despair. His voice trembled with emotion. I promise to love you every day. Not despite who you are, but exactly because of who you are. I promise to defend you, protect you, and never let anyone make you feel less than the queen you are. When it was Rebecca's turn, she couldn't even read the paper she'd prepared. She spoke straight from her heart. Ryan, you saved me. Not because you took me from my father's house, but because you taught me I was worth saving. You showed me I was strong when I thought I was weak. You loved me when I didn't know how to love myself. She wiped away the tears that flowed freely. I promise to spend the rest of my life showing you that you chose right. The honeymoon in Paris was like living a dream. Ryan took Rebecca to see everything she'd always wanted to see, the Eiffel Tower, the Louvre, the romantic cafes along the Seine. But what moved her most was when he said, Rebecca, I want you to know this isn't just a trip. This is your life now. You deserve to see the world, visit beautiful places, live adventures. And I want to be by your side in all of them. When they returned to the United States, they had a plan. Ryan would use his fortune and medical knowledge to open a free hospital in town. And Rebecca would use her experience of rejection to create a shelter for women who had nowhere to go. You know why I want to do this? Rebecca said to Ryan as they visited the land where the shelter would be built. Why? Because I know what it's like to have no one. I know what it's like to be rejected by your own family. And I want every woman who goes through that to know there's hope. The project became reality faster than they imagined. Ryan Cooper Hospital and Rebecca Cooper Shelter became references in the region. Rebecca worked every day with women who had stories similar to hers, rejected for being fat, for being poor, for being different. You're not defective, she told each one. You're unique. And being unique means the world needs exactly what you have to offer. It was on one of those work mornings that Rebecca felt the first dizziness. Then came the morning sickness. When Ryan confirmed what she already suspected, they both cried with happiness. We're having a baby, Rebecca whispered, still not believing it. We're having a family, Ryan responded, kissing her still flat belly. A real family. Built on love. The pregnancy was calm, full of care and affection. Ryan wouldn't let Rebecca make any effort, but she insisted on continuing to work at the shelter as long as possible. I want these women to see it's possible to be happy, she said. I want them to see we can build our own families, our own way. Lucas Ryan Cooper was born on a spring morning. Chubby, healthy, with his mother's green eyes and his father's dark hair. When Rebecca held him for the first time, she cried like she'd never cried before. "He's perfect," she whispered. Like his mother, Ryan responded, kissing his wife's sweaty forehead. 2 years later, when Lucas was already taking his first steps through the ranch garden, Rebecca received an unexpected visit. Mrs. Rosa appeared at the door, nervous, bringing news Rebecca wasn't prepared to hear. "Girl, your father is very sick. Very sick. And he's asking to speak with you." Rebecca sat down slowly in a kitchen chair. "How sick?" "The doctors say there's no hope left. And he's alone, girl. Completely alone. Your brother left for Europe, took what was left of the money. There's no one taking care of him." Rebecca looked out the window and saw Ryan playing with Lucas in the garden. Her life was perfect now. It would be easy to say no. It would be fair to say no. "Mrs. Rosa, is he really alone?" "There's only a nurse that Ryan is paying to care for him. No one else." Rebecca closed her eyes. Ryan was paying for her father's care, even after everything. That afternoon, Rebecca went to visit her father for the first time in almost 3 years. The mansion was deteriorated. Some furniture had been sold. There was an air of abandonment everywhere. Colonel Miller was in a hospital bed set up in the old music room. Unrecognizable. Thin, pale, small. When he saw Rebecca enter, his eyes filled with tears. "Rebecca, you came." "I came." She sat in the chair beside the bed, keeping her distance. "How are you?" "Dying. And deserving it." He tried to sit up but didn't have the strength. "Rebecca, I need to ask you something before I go." "What?" "Forgiveness." The word came out broken, mixed with tears. "Forgiveness for calling you fat. Forgiveness for selling you. Forgiveness for being the worst father a daughter could have." Rebecca felt tears burn her eyes, but didn't let them fall. "Why only now?" "Because only now, alone, sick, abandoned. I understood what I did to you." He looked at her with an intensity she'd never seen. "You were the only real person in our family. The only one with a heart. And I destroyed you because I envied that goodness." "Envied?" "Envied because you were better than me. Because even being rejected, you didn't become cruel. Even being humiliated, you didn't humiliate others." The colonel began crying openly. "I called you ugly, useless, because I knew inside you were beautiful. And I never was." Rebecca was silent for a long moment. Then she stood and walked to the window. Outside, she saw the garden where she played as a child. Where she dreamed of a different life. "Father," she said without turning around. "I forgive you." "Rebecca. I forgive you. But that doesn't erase what you did. Doesn't undo the years of humiliation. Doesn't justify anything." She turned to look at him. "I forgive you because I choose not to carry this anger anymore. Because I built a beautiful life despite you. Not because of you." The colonel cried even harder. "I know. And I'm grateful you managed to be happy. Do you want to meet your grandson?" His eyes lit up. "Can I?" Rebecca left and returned with Ryan and Lucas. The 2-year-old boy was shy in his mother's lap, but when his grandfather extended his trembling hand, Lucas held his finger. "He's beautiful," the colonel whispered. "Just like his mother." "He'll grow up knowing he's loved," Rebecca said firmly. "He'll grow up knowing he's worth exactly as he is." The colonel nodded, understanding the message. 3 weeks later, Colonel Miller died in his sleep. Rebecca went to the funeral, not out of obligation, but because she'd learned that forgiving liberates the one who forgives. 5 years later, Rebecca was in the ranch garden watching Lucas, now 7 years old, playing with his little sister, Laura Rebecca. Yes, they'd given their daughter the name of Ryan's first wife. Because Rebecca had learned that true love has no jealousy of the past. Ryan approached from behind and hugged her around the waist. "What are you thinking about?" "I'm thinking that if someone had told me 10 years ago I'd be this happy, I wouldn't have believed it." "And now?" Rebecca turned in his arms and smiled. "Now I know the best stories start with once upon a time there was a woman nobody wanted and end with and she built an empire of love." Ryan kissed her there in the garden, surrounded by their children, by the life they'd built together. And Rebecca finally understood the truth that took a lifetime to learn: she'd never needed to be different to be loved. She just needed to find someone who loved her exactly as she was. Ryan Cooper Hospital kept growing, serving thousands of people for free. Rebecca Cooper Shelter saved hundreds of women from violence and family rejection. And every time a new woman arrived at the shelter, broken, humiliated, thinking she was worth nothing, Rebecca was there. She'd sit beside her, hold her hand, and say, "I know how you feel. I've been there. But look at me now. If I could do it, you can too. Because you're not what they said you were. You're what you choose to be." And so, the woman who was sold by her own father transformed into the savior of hundreds of other women. Humiliation became strength. Rejection became purpose. Pain became wisdom. And the girl who was never good enough became the most admired woman in the entire region. Because sometimes, the most beautiful stories are born from the most painful beginnings. And so ends the story of Rebecca Miller, the woman who was sold like cattle by her own father and transformed into one of the most admired and respected people in the region. She proved that no matter how many times you're knocked down, no matter how many people humiliate you, you can always get up and build something extraordinary. Rebecca transformed humiliation into power. Rejection into purpose. Pain into wisdom. And if this story touched your heart in any way, I'm sure you don't want to miss the next emotional stories I'm bringing to this channel. So click that red subscribe button now. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you get alerted every time I post a new story that will touch your emotions. If this story moved you, leave your like down below. It helps me so much to keep bringing real and inspiring stories like this to you. And tell me in the comments, which part of the story touched you the most? Was it when Rebecca discovered she was being sold? When she confronted her father at the gala? When Ryan burned his ex-wife's letters? Or when she finally found the happiness she deserved? Write it down below. I read all the comments and love knowing what you thought. Until the next story, my friend. And never forget, you are so much stronger than you imagine. You are so much more valuable than they made you believe. And you deserve to be happy, exactly the way you are. See you next time. Bye.